I think you're about to call your next witness.
Yes. Can I get a time check real quick?
Sure.
Give it an hour and 23 minutes.
Still. You did tell me that before the break. All right, I'm going to call Richard Corbett.
May I have a time check? Yes. 2 hours and 7 minutes remain.
And y'all don't have to use all the time.
I know Miss Sheridan up there's got her, I'm very jealous about her Starbucks that she has up there. She's going to keep her through the afternoon.
You're on tune and staying awake.
I'm going to try to keep it brief.
Thank you.
You've been sworn, is that correct, Mr. Corbett?
Yes, I have.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Corbett, can you state and spell your name for the record?
My name is Richard Corbett, C-O-R-B-I-T-T.
And are you a lawyer?
I am, sir.
How long have you been a lawyer in the state of Texas?
40 years,
Do you remember the year you were licensed?
1969.
Have you ever participated in one of these proceedings before?
Never, sir.
And how did you come to know Suzanne Wooten?
I have known Ms. Wood, please forgive me, I have known Suzanne for going on approximately 15 years.
And when did you first meet her?
Well, she was practicing law in Collin County, Texas, where I live in that county, and I also practice law in the county, in Collin County and Dallas and other surrounding parts of the Metroplex.
So would you say that your practice is predominantly centralized in North Texas?
Yes, sir.
What kind of law do you practice primarily?
I do criminal and divorce, sir.
So criminal and family law.
Yes, sir.
Are you active in the various bar associations in North Texas?
Yes, I am, sir.
And part of those bar associations, you come in contact with quite a bit of other lawyers in North Texas.
Many, sir.
Throughout this process, and since it's now been about 4 years since this whole thing started, have you come to understand the reputation of Judge Wooten in the community?
Yes, I have.
And what is that reputation?
Exceptional.
Have you ever done anything that would be dishonest?
No, never that I have ever witnessed or known anything about from either hearsay or my personal knowledge, sir.
What about anything that's questioned her integrity?
None, sir. Save and except these charges that came out in 2010 or about, sir.
Do you know the reputation based on your dealings with the other lawyers and other bar associations about their feelings about Judge Wooten?
Yes, I do.
And what is that opinion or reputation?
I think that they have the highest esteem for Suzanne and Ms. Wooten as I share.
And you understand that the board has the discretion to either suspend Judge Wooten from the practice of law through the term of her probation or to disbar her. You understand that?
Those are the two verdict sheets that I understand that this council has, sir.
Okay. And do you have an opinion about what this board should do with the law license of Judge Wooten?
Well, you know, Peter, Mr. I'm actually honored to be allowed to come down and talk to the council, and I just wish that I had the appropriate words to convince them that, goodness gracious, this lady has been punished. Quite frankly, it is a continuation because there are rehabilitative procedures in progress. As you well know, she is on 10 years probation. She's already done her, and I don't know what testimony's going on. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, but and I know from my personal knowledge from her that all fines have been paid. Community service has been accomplished, and I'm sure she is dotting the I's and crossing the T's. I just, like I said, I wish that I knew the proper words to convince this board, this judicial conduct board, not to disbar her, sir.
So is it your belief then that they should suspend her for the term of probation?
I do, sir. And may I add one thing, please?
Please.
I know that her ticket is locked up, and with all due respect, I don't know where, but I know that she has already submitted her bar license, which of course is near and dear to all of us. And I would just hope that they would consider giving Suzanne a little hope to continue to go on.
One of the questions that has come up is, if this board does decide to suspend Judge Wooten instead of disbar her, what the effect it might have on the citizens of Texas. Do you have an opinion either way?
No, sir. You know, I tried quite a few criminal cases, and of course that's one of the main arguments that ex-prosecutors and now defense lawyers on the defense side have made on many occasions about, you know, and that's the thing you're supposed to do in Collin County, Texas, or Dallas County, Texas, or whatever it is. It really doesn't send a message, with all due respect, folks, on your vote. If you would, and I pray not, choose to vote to disbar her, it is not going to ring a bell through the states, through all the counties, and 243 of them, whatever it is, in the state of Texas. And I don't think it would be a message that could be heard, and that's just why I just beg you to please just reconsider to just suspend.
Pass the witness.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Corbett, my name is Beth Stevens, Rebecca Stevens. Do you consider yourself Ms. Wooten's friend?
Well, yes, I hope. Yes, I do.
Would you ever give or receive a bribe?
No, I would not.
Would you agree with me that giving and receiving bribes, an attorney doing so, undermines our court system and judicial process?
Would I consider that to be against the law?
Well, do you agree that it undermines our process, the judicial process?
Well, sure, it's improper.
Do you agree, and this is in that same vein, do you agree with me that giving and receiving bribes reflects adversely on an attorney's integrity?
Yes, I do.
Do you know the crimes that Ms. Wooten has been convicted of?
I know quite frankly, most of just about all the charges, yes.
Okay. Do you believe that someone that's guilty of those charges should be able to keep their law license?
Well, ma'am, with all due respect, that's a confusing question. Tell me what you mean, keep your law license.
Okay.
Are you going to
I'll
suspend
rephrase.
it, or are you going to?
Thank you. That was a bad question.
I'm sorry.
Is it your position, are you telling this board, that someone that's guilty of these 9 crimes should not be disbarred?
I am absolutely unequivocally, in my opinion, saying that Suzanne Wooten should not be disbarred. Her license should continue to be suspended, because that's part of the terms and conditions of probation.
Okay, well, let's take it out of Suzanne Wooten. Ex-lawyer that you are not familiar with is convicted of 6 crimes of
Yes, I'm going to object to this line of questioning called for speculation. We're dealing with Ms. Wooten's matters here, not the hypothetical person who was convicted. We're dealing with these facts.
I think that the Respondents' Council has been given wide latitude to ask these sort of questions, and I'm entitled to do the same.
I'm overruling the objection.
Would you please repeat, please? I'm sorry, ma'am.
Yes, just an attorney that you're unfamiliar with, convicted of 6 counts of bribery, 1 count of engaging in organized criminal activity, 1 count of money laundering, and 1 count of tampering with a governmental record with the intent to defraud or harm. This attorney that you're not familiar with, do you think that they should not be disbarred for being convicted of those crimes?
Well, if you want to paint in such a broad brush, like, with all due respect, ma'am, that you have, I know about this particular situation, and therefore I am speaking specifically as to Suzanne Wooten.
Okay, I'll object to non-responsive.
I think it is. Okay, I'm sorry. Please.
I'm going to let the witness answer.
I'm sorry?
I overrule the objection. You can go ahead and answer.
If
finish your
any
answer.
lawyer in the state of Texas would be convicted of 9 offenses that involved the kind of turpitude that you're talking about, do I believe they should just, all of them, be disbarred? Is that your question, ma'am, to me? And I'm not trying to be offensive.
No, I'm asking outside of the respondent. do you think it's okay for an attorney who's been convicted of these crimes to not be disbarred?
Well, I'm sorry, it would depend upon the circumstances, ma'am. I'm not trying to be evasive. I'm sorry.
That's fine. We'll leave that question. You were addressing the public in North Texas that if this board disbars respondent, that it wouldn't be sending a message, because I think you said because no one would really receive the message. Is that accurate?
I don't think it would ring the bell that, with all due respect, I think the Attorney General's office wants. If I'm not aligned by saying that, so be it. I'll stick with it.
We're from the state bar, so that's separate from the Attorney
Yes,
General's
ma'am.
office. But you're aware that if she were disbarred or suspended, this is published in the Bar Journal. That attorneys around the state would see that.
Absolutely.
Okay, I'll pass the witness.
Nothing further, Judge.
Any questions from the board members?
Please.
Witnesses? Okay, just
Yeah, I've
excuse the
asked
witness.
this witness to be excused so we can get on a flight home.
Thank
K-I-N-G.
Keane. Sorry about that. Ms. Keane, you've been previously sworn, is that correct?
That's correct.
May I continue?
Yes.
You state and spell your name for the record.
Patricia, Patricia, D, as in December, Keane, Keane.
Ms. Keane, what do you do for a living?
I'm a lawyer,
How long have you been a lawyer?
almost 34 years,
And you remember the year that you were licensed?
1978.
Becoming a common theme today, 1978. Did you come to get to know a Suzanne Wooten during the time of your practice?
Yes, I did.
And when was that?
I think it started about 14 years ago. I mean, that's about when we met.
What kind of law do you primarily practice?
I'm a family law lawyer.
So did you meet Ms. Wooten or Judge Wooten primarily through your practice as a family law practitioner?
Yes.
And you remember the circumstances? Did you have a case with her? Did you meet her at a bar function?
I met her, I think, probably initially at a bar function, and I then saw her a lot at the courthouse.
What was her reputation as a lawyer?
Outstanding.
Can you elaborate any more on?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Everybody knew her to be honest. They knew her to be trustworthy. Suzanne, like many family lawyers, was somebody you could do business with a handshake and not have to worry about papering everything you did with her. She was smart. I think everybody felt that having a case with Suzanne Wooten was quite a wonderful experience because she was not just a businesswoman and not just a lawyer, but she was professional in the way she dealt with people.
Did you at some point make a decision to whether or not to practice in Collin County in a certain district or in a certain court?
Mm-hmm.
And what was that?
Well, I'm not sure I understand your question.
Did you like to practice in Collin County?
I do practice in Collin County.
Was there a particular judge that you didn't care for to practice in front of?
Objection relevance.
I'll get there if she gives me an opportunity.
All over the rule, the objection.
Yes, I did not care to practice in front of Judge Sandoval.
And who was Judge Sandoval?
He was one of the district judges they were all judges of general jurisdiction, but he would hear family law cases, so I had at least 2 cases in front of him.
Was he subsequently replaced by someone?
Yes,
And who replaced him?
Judge Wooten.
Was that, in your idea, the first time any incumbent judge had ever been challenged in Collin County?
To the best of my knowledge, that's correct.
Pretty remarkable task. Would you agree with that?
Remarkable and long overdue.
What was and you practice in Collin County still today?
Yes.
Do you have a camaraderie or do you have contact with a lot of lawyers in the North Texas area?
Yes.
Do you have an opinion about Judge Wooten's reputation among those lawyers in North Texas?
That she was somebody that you would like to be in front of because she was honest and she followed the law.
Let's talk about these convictions that she has. Do you, when was the first time you heard about the accusations?
At a funeral.
About how long ago?
You know, I don't remember. It was a long time before they were actually able to indict her. So whenever the indictment finally came down, I would say it was probably well over a year before that.
What was your understanding? There was a grand jury investigation going on?
My understanding was there was a grand jury investigation going on, and then another grand jury investigation going on.
I'm going to object to relevance again, Mr. Chair.
I'm going to overrule and give you a running objection.
Thank you.
At some point, Judge Wooten was indicted, is that correct?
That's correct.
And did you ever learn from Judge Wooten if there was a plea offer extended to her?
Yes, I did.
And what was that plea offer?
Object to hearsay.
She got personal knowledge. Again, it's the party opponent. I mean, she's here. I'm not the party.
Well, she can testify. Were you there at the offer of the plea?
No, you're not. No, I was not.
I'm going to sustain the objection.
What was your opinion when you found out that Judge Wooten was convicted of these 9 counts?
I was appalled
And why were you appalled?
because I know her and I know her reputation, and I didn't then and I still don't believe that she did anything wrong, and I think the jury got it wrong, and I don't say that about juries very often.
You practiced 34 years.
That's right.
This part of the things that the board's going to look at in this particular situation is acceptance of responsibility. Obviously, based on the testimony today, Judge Wooten has not accepted responsibility because she claims she's innocent. Is that your understanding of the situation?
Yes.
And among the lawyers that practice in North Texas, what do you know about their understanding, the common reputation, the opinion of the situation?
We all think she was railroaded.
What do you mean by railroaded?
I think when it takes 6 grand juries in order to indict
I'm going to
someone.
object to relevance, speculation. It's an attack on the underlying conviction.
Your objections may be well taken. I'm going to overrule them.
Continue, Ms. King.
To begin with, I know Suzanne, Judge Wooten, and her reputation and who she is as a person. Secondly, I know that it took those 6 grand juries to be able to get an indictment against her. Thirdly, I believe I know the people who are behind it and why. So I don't know what happened with that jury. I was not present. But I don't think they got it right.
Have you tried any jury trials in Collin County?
I don't think so.
Okay. I mean, fair enough. I mean, I'm just asking the question. What about if you don't practice criminal law?
No.
Do you have the knowledge of the reputation of Collin County juries in general?
Yes.
What is that reputation?
Since this is a different line of questioning, I'll object to relevance again.
I'm overruling, giving a running objection.
Thank you.
My belief about Collin County juries, is that they're very conservative. They believe that where there is smoke, there is fire, and that convincing them otherwise, which is not the job of somebody, at least in a criminal case, to prove, is very difficult.
This board has the ability to either suspend Judge Wooten's law license for the period of her 10-year probation or to disbar her. That is their discretion. I mean, that is by the rules. We're not asking for anything they don't have the authority to do. Do you have an opinion of either way of what this board should do?
Well, I don't believe they should disbar her. I hate that they can't do more than I wish they'd make it go away, but if they can suspend her license as opposed to disbarring her, then that's what they need to do.
One of the questions that you might get from the board and from opposing counsel is how that would have an effect on the public in general. Do you think by this board suspending Judge Wooten instead of disbarring her will have a negative effect on this board and the state bar in general?
On the contrary, what happened in that jury trial was wrong. What happened in all of the attempts to indict her was wrong. Suzanne Wooten was not the one who misbehaved in this case. There were others who misbehaved, but she was not the one. And it doesn't protect the public by disbarring her. It protects those who went after her because they lost their tame judge who would only do what they asked him to do.
That's the witness.
Yes, please. Ms. King, do you consider yourself Suzanne Wooten's friend?
Yes.
You said that, I think you said this, that you were not present at trial.
No, I was not.
Were you present in any of the grand jury proceedings?
No.
So when you say what happened in the jury trial was wrong, you have no personal knowledge of that at all. Is that correct?
I wasn't present for the jury trial.
Okay.
I
So you
think
didn't hear
I s-
any of the evidence?
I didn't hear the evidence.
The standard response to thinking that a jury got it wrong is to appeal, is that right?
Not always.
Is that a response, is that an appropriate response to thinking the jury got it wrong, is to file an appeal?
It can be.
I think you said that Collin County juries have a reputation for being conservative and basically it's easy to convict someone. Is that correct?
That's what I believe.
Is it your understanding of the criminal law that a criminal defendant can elect to have the judge, as in a bench trial, hear the entire case?
Yes.
Would you ever give or receive a bribe?
No.
Do you agree that giving and receiving bribes undermines the judicial process if it's done by an attorney?
Yes.
Do you agree that giving and receiving bribes, if it's done by an attorney, reflects adversely on that attorney's integrity?
Yes.
Pass the witness.
Do you think in this situation, Ms. King, looking at these facts with this respondent, do you think that it negatively affects Judge Wooten's integrity and honesty?
No.
I know you don't practice criminal law, but is it your understanding that the state has to approve a waiver of a jury trial before somebody can have a trial before the court?
That's correct.
So it's not the defendant's choice.
No.
Pass the witness.
No further questions.
Anybody on the board have questions for Ms. King? None? Any objection to the witness being excused?
We'd ask for her to be excused.
Witness is excused.
Thank you.
F-A-Y-E Matthews-Bridges. Common spelling. Ms. Matthews-Bridges, you've been previously sworn, is that correct?
That is correct.
I continue on.
Yes.
Can you state and spell your name for the record?
Faye Matthews Bridges.
How do you spell your first name?
F-A-Y.
I think I added an E by accident, so I apologize. And Matthews-Bridges, can you spell that?
M-A-T-T-H-E-W-S-B-R-I-D-G-E-S.
And how are you currently employed?
I'm an attorney with the Dallas Independent School District.
And how long have you been an attorney in the state of Texas?
15 years.
And during those 15 years, kind of give a brief summary of your practice.
I originally practiced down in Kingsville, Texas for a while. We did some general practitioner work there. Then I moved to Dallas and did workers' comp and personal injury law. And then I went to work with an aviation firm for a little while. And then I've been with Dallas ISD for the last 11 years.
What's your responsibilities briefly? What do you do for DISD?
My primary duties are I serve as the policy administrator, so I oversee the development of policy with the district. I also serve as one of the advisors to our board as an election law attorney, and I serve as a parliamentarian for our board.
In your context of working for DISD as an attorney, do you come into contact with other lawyers in the region?
Yes.
And are you active in the bar associations in the region?
I'm part of the state bar of school attorneys.
And yet there are meetings in the North Texas area?
Some.
How did you get to know Judge Suzanne Wooten?
We went to law school together,
And where'd you all go to law school?
St. Mary's.
So you met in law school?
Yes,
And did you quickly become friends?
very quickly.
And when you graduated, you stayed in San Antonio and Judge Wooten moved up to Dallas?
That's true.
And when did you finally move up to Dallas?
I actually moved to Dallas in January of 1998.
Was Judge Wooten already practicing up here?
Yes, she was.
So you've all just stayed good friends over the last 14 years?
Yes.
Your friendship with her, is that going to skew or somehow diminish your testimony before this board today?
No, not at all.
Did you come to understand or become aware of a criminal investigation pending against Judge Wooten at some point?
Yes, I did.
And when was that?
I can't determine exactly the time frame, but I knew pretty early on when it actually had occurred. I can't give you a date.
Did Judge Wooten actually talk to you or speak with you about running for judge prior to her actually announcing her candidacy?
She did.
And can you remember how far back that was?
Unfortunately, I'm sorry, I can't exactly. It was right after she had been asked when she spoke to me about it.
Did you, was Suzanne a successful family law practitioner?
Very.
Did she make good money?
Yes, she did.
Could she, based on your personal knowledge, could she have fully funded a campaign for district judge?
I'm gonna object to relevance. I'm sorry to sound like a parrot, but it's not relevant.
Overrule objection, give you a running objection.
Thank you.
Based on your understanding, personal knowledge, do you think that Ms. Wooten could have afforded to pay for a run for the district bench?
I believe so.
Do you have an opinion about the honesty of Judge Wooten?
I do.
And what is that opinion?
I believe she's a very honest person. I've known her for 20 years, and I believe that she's very truthful and very forthcoming with herself.
What about an opinion on her integrity? Yeah.
Yes, I do have an opinion on that.
And what is that?
I believe she has the highest integrity.
Even knowing that she's been convicted of these 9 felony counts, does that change your opinion about her honesty and her integrity?
No, it does not.
Generally, do you think that just because of a conviction of one of these crimes, that a board of like the Board of Disciplinary Appeals should just automatically disbar without understanding what happened in the case?
No, I do not.
And do you think it's a case-by-case basis that they should make these evaluations?
I do.
If you're asked on cross-examination about whether somebody who's convicted of these 9 felony counts should automatically be disbarred or not be a lawyer anymore, do you agree with that?
No, I do not.
And why not?
Because I believe, one, that she's an honest person. I also don't believe that, based on the things that have happened to her, I think that she's worked hard over her lifetime, built up a reputable practice, and that she should be given an opportunity to continue making a living.
Let's talk about the reputation of other lawyers in North Texas. And if you can't testify to this, that's fine, but do you generally know by the associations you're involved with and the communications you've had with other lawyers about her general reputation among other lawyers in North Texas?
Yes.
And what is that reputation?
As far as I know, it's been highly regarded.
And do you know that if this board decides to suspend instead of disbar, would that send a negative message to the lawyers saying you can get these 9 counts, 9 felony counts, and not get disbarred? Does that send a bad message to those lawyers?
I do not believe so, based on this case.
Why?
Because of the person that she is. And I believe that she was wrongfully convicted, but in doing so, I think that she and the person that she is shows the people that know her the kind of person that she really is.
So do you have an opinion about what this board should do?
I wish they wouldn't do anything as far as disbarring her or suspending. But if they have to do one or the other, then I would ask that they just suspend, because again, I think she should be allowed to go ahead and pursue and have a career, because even despite these things, she practices a good attorney.
So you understand that if she's suspended, it'll be for the full 10 years of probation?
Yes.
And that's what you're asking this board to do?
If that's one of the things that they have to do, yes.
Absolutely.
I have no questions for this witness.
Any questions? I have one, just if you accept as true the convictions with regard to Ms. Wooten, you accept that as true, would that change your opinion of her honesty?
That's hard to answer in that regard, because I don't accept them as true. I don't believe that, and I know she went before a jury, but I know her as well, and my interactions with her are very close, and I just don't believe that that happens, and I believe that sometimes juries get it wrong.
Okay, but if you accepted that as true, it would have an impact on your opinion, wouldn't it?
Possibly, yes.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Matthews-Bridges, just to clarify your testimony, and follow up to Mr. Lee's question, if you believed that Ms. Wooten was in fact guilty of the crimes for which she was committed, would you still be asking us to simply suspend her as opposed to disbarring her?
Well, to be honest, in this situation, I would have to say, again, based on each individual case, and in this situation, to me, she should be able to go ahead and pursue her practice, although she's already been punished from being a judge. But I think that she still should be allowed to go ahead and serve as an attorney. And I think I would say the same thing for anyone, despite the other.
So I'm not sure I understood the answer to the question. If in fact you believe that she was guilty of the crime as she was convicted for, yes or no, would you still be asking us to suspend her as opposed to disbarring her?
Yes, I believe, and I don't know if I answered that correctly before, but yes, I still would think that a person should still have an opportunity to pursue their career.
Any other questions? Yes.
Ms. Matthews-Bridges, have you ever discussed this situation post the jury conviction with the judge?
Somewhat, yes.
What has she told you about that?
Well, to be honest, we don't say on it a lot. She's a very strong person, so most of our conversations have been, are you okay? She's talked to me about whether or not what she's doing career-wise, trying to get back on track and doing things for that. We've talked about several different things. Her sons are my godsons, so we have different relationships outside of what just goes on with this case. With this case, the only thing I've ever heard from her is that she did not do this. And she felt like she was wrongly accused.
Ms. Matthews-Bridges, you just said that you had conversations with Judge Wooten about her career and trying to get things back on track. What is she trying to do to get back on track?
Well, she's working with a firm, and she's actually set up a mediation firm that she's working with. So she's trying to go on with her life and be strong and carry on. She has a family to take care of.
Has she said anything about?
I know that's what you're getting. She's not right. That's what she's asking. I'm sorry.
Let me ask the witness, since the witness is the one under oath here. Is she doing anything to practice law?
No.
Okay.
No.
That's how it sounded in the record. So
I know it sounds so. I was like,
No, she's not.
sorry.
Yes, Chairman. Ms. Matthews-Bridges, has she talked to you at all, or do you know of your own knowledge about how she's doing on probation? Do you know anything about that?
I do. I know that she's worked hard to try to meet all the requirements that have been there. Some of those she's already completed, as far as I know.
Like what? Do you know?
She's already completed her community service. She's paid on her fines and things like that. So I do know that she's been working hard to try to make sure that she gets those accomplished ahead of time.
Any other questions?
Oh,
Go ahead.
Hey, and you understand there are 1,080 community service hours that were assessed.
That's true.
And your understanding is in less than a year, she's completed all 1,080 hours of community service.
That's my understanding.
And she's also paid her $10,000 fine plus court costs.
Yes.
And she's done all the classes that she was required to do as a condition of her probation.
As far as I know, yes.
So is it your understanding the only thing that she has left to do on this probation is to wait out the 10 years?
That's correct.
Has she been practicing law?
No, she has not.
Do you need to have a law license to mediate?
No.
Pass the witness.
Stevens.
I do have, did you attend the trial?
Parts of it.
Did you hear all of the evidence that was presented to the jury?
Not all of it.
Pass the witness.
Nothing further.
Any other questions? Yes.
Just one. You indicated that she has fulfilled her responsibilities with respect to community service. I assume you were not following her around during the time she was doing that.
That's correct.
So what you're telling us is something that you have heard from her but did not personally observe.
I observed she had a paper or something that was showing what some of her hours were, so I did recall seeing that. Now, I can't go into depth with everything, but she did have a paper with some of her completions.
But again, this is something you saw evidence of but didn't personally observe.
Her completing
Yes.
community service? No, I did not see her actually completing it.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Ma'am, fair to say that you find Judge Wooten to be a credible person.
I do.
Have you ever had the occasion to listen to her while she testified under oath?
Go back to the day. I believe so, but I can't recall exactly.
Do you believe that her statements, whether under oath or not, are credible?
I'm sorry?
Do you believe that her statements, whether under oath or not, are credible?
Or what's your last word?
Credible, I'm
Credible.
sorry.
Okay, yes, I do.
Thank you, ma'am.
Anybody have any other questions? Questions by counsel?
Then this witness be released.
No
You
objections
take it.
from us.
Witness is excused.
Our next witness. I noticed that Miss Kathy Chopin from the Attorney General's office is in the room. She was one of the prosecutors on the case. I don't know if she intends to call them as a rebuttal witness, but I want to make sure that the State Bar knew that she was sitting in here listening to testimony.
I didn't know that, thank you, but I don't plan to call her.
You don't intend to call her?
I do not.
I might, so I asked her to be under the rule. Since she's here.
Okay, she'll be your next witness?
No, she won't. I might still call her, though, depending on what they do after we get done. Is this my chair? I didn't subpoena her. She's here, Your Honor. I mean,
She can leave.
she's been.
Okay. Would you leave the courtroom during the proceedings and we'll call you if we need you?
Yes, sir, thank you.
Thank you.
Just for the record, when did she come in? I didn't see her come in.
I didn't either.
Yeah, I think we need to be here.
All the witnesses kind of running together.
You were here after lunch, right?
Oh, yes.
Were you here before lunch?
No, I was not.
Thank you, thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Gonzalez, you've been previously sworn, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. May I proceed, Your Honor?
Yes.
Can you state and spell your name for the record?
Yes, it's Manuel Gonzalez, Gonzalez.
And are you an attorney, Mr. Gonzalez?
Yes, I am.
And how long have you been an attorney in the state of Texas?
I was licensed in November of 1995.
And briefly give a summary of your practice to the board.
I'm board certified in criminal law, have been board certified since 2000. My practice is primarily criminal, I'd say 60%, 40% family law, although that varies a little bit. I was a prosecutor in Collin County for 11 years, and then after I left in early 2006, I practiced exclusively family law for about a year and then began combining practices.
What years were you a assistant district attorney in Collin County?
Started at the very end of 95, beginning of 96, all the way through April, or the beginning of April of 2006, I believe.
So you served under District Attorney Tom O'Connell and District Attorney John Roach, Sr.?
Yes.
Why did you leave the DA's office?
Object to relevance.
Overruled objection.
I left the DA's office because the climate of the office had changed. The people who had been, I guess, a little bit higher up under O'Connell were all put in positions that they found distasteful, basically. Basically, they ran us off.
Did you know a guy named Chris Milner?
I knew Mr. Milner very well.
What was his position there?
He came in as the chief of the white collar division.
Did he have a reputation in Collin County?
Can I get a running objection on
Yes,
this
you may.
entire line of questioning? It's the commission's position that it's completely irrelevant, it's attacking the underlying conviction, and it's just not appropriate for this proceeding.
Given a running objection.
Thank you.
Good answer.
What was the question? Did he have a reputation?
Did he have a reputation did you have a reputation of him, the way he handled himself?
I had an opinion of his reputation,
Opinion,
absolutely.
let's use that. What's your opinion?
That he was somewhat sociopathic and that he enjoyed prosecuting people. It was a pleasure for him. I mean, I never got the impression that he was motivated strictly by the law. He took a disliking to some defendants, and he was much more aggressive in their prosecution than he would be in others.
Do you know, was he the one that initiated the investigation against Judge Wooten?
I don't know that. I don't believe. Mr. Milner didn't have a reputation for sharing his thoughts with people he considered underlings, and so you know, his office was always locked. He kept his things private, and very few attorneys worked with him.
What was the, based on your knowledge, what was the climate or the political climate in Collin County during those years?
It went from being very open and easy between state and defense to being very antagonistic. The impression was when Mr. Roach became DA and Greg Davis brought us all in to talk to us that we were going to become more aggressive. Collin County was very conservative, so recs were going to be at a premium. We were no longer going to allow people to go open. We were going to dictate the terms, and if the defense didn't like it, too bad.
Did you try a bunch of cases both as a prosecutor in front of juries and as a defense attorney?
Yes.
What's your opinion of Collin County juries in general?
I would say they were much more conservative when I started in '95, beginning of '96. We've had many people move into Collin County from other states and other places, and they've become more, I would say, cerebral. They're open to more arguments, and they're not quite as conservative as they used to be, but they're still more conservative than Dallas.
When you say more conservative, I mean, what do you mean by that? I mean, just that they're going to go with the state more, or they're going to, I mean, what do you mean by that?
I mean, they place, let me phrase this properly. In Collin County, it is still the prevailing belief that the prosecution is there to do right and to be just, and they place a lot of faith in their public officials. So if you're going to try a case in Collin County, and you need to know that the prosecutor starts off with way more credibility than the defense does.
So do you think that, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but do you think that an indictment itself is given more weight in Collin County versus Dallas County?
Very much so.
Lost for speculation.
If he knows.
In my opinion, very much so.
When did you first meet Suzanne Wooten?
I couldn't tell you what year, but I first met her at a young lawyers function in Collin County back when I was a misdemeanor prosecutor, so that would have been
mid-90s?
Yeah, mid to late 90s.
Did you become friends?
We were friendly. I mean, we weren't best buds. She was practicing family law, and I was a prosecutor at the time, so we didn't really interact at work. But I would see her at bar functions, and she was friends with lawyers that I was friends with.
So you'd say that, let me ask you this, are you involved with bar associations in North Texas?
I am, but not as much as I used to be, not when I was younger.
Do you have an opinion on the honesty of Judge Wooten?
Yes.
And what is that opinion?
I believe that she's, in all the dealings she's ever had with me, she's been honest and forthright.
What about her integrity?
Very much. I consider her to have a very high degree of integrity.
This board takes the convictions that have, proof of convictions that have already been entered into evidence as conclusive. That she was convicted of these things. You understand that?
Yes.
And one of the reasons that we're having this hearing is we've talked about this to try to give some background to why they should suspend rather than disbar. Is that kind of the conversations we've had?
Yes, that's my understanding.
The state bar might ask you on cross-examination if any lawyer is convicted of these 9 offenses, should they just automatically be disbarred, or is it case determinative?
They may ask me that, okay.
I mean, what do you think about that?
Having prosecuted and defended, I know that not I mean, the reason our system is the way it is because every case needs to be handled on a case-by-case basis. It would be, you know, unconscionable for us to make blanket decisions without actually looking into the facts. Personally, I think every case has to be looked at that way, and I don't have a problem with that. No, not at all.
What do you think the effect of, if this board decides to suspend Judge Wooten for the next 10 years, what do you think that effect would have on the lawyer community in North Texas, if you know, if you have an opinion?
Well, I mean, I think anytime a lawyer gets suspended, I mean, that causes us all pause. I mean, this is our livelihood. This is, in a lot of people's lives, this is their whole identity. And to not be able to do that, to not be able to practice, I mean, that's a huge threat, especially for, you know, someone like me who's in their, you know, early 40s and with kids and a wife and a business and people who rely on me. So yeah, I think we all sit up and take notice.
Now this board, like we've talked about, has the discretion to do one or the other, either disbar or suspend. Do you have an opinion about what this board should do with the law license of Judge Wooten?
Well, I think that I do have an opinion, yes.
And what is that opinion?
That if the choice is between suspension or disbarment, that suspension is the appropriate decision.
Why?
I think once again, the suspension in and of itself sends a message, and I think that's one of the things this body is concerned about. I think that it also is demonstrative of the fact that this body has actually looked into the facts and deemed that to be appropriate. I just think disbarment is incredibly harsh and should be reserved for the worst of the worst.
You don't think this case is the worst of the worst?
No, not based on what I know.
That's what it is.
Mr. Gonzalez, did you sit in on the trial?
Yes, I did.
Did you hear all of the evidence that was presented to the jury?
No, I did not hear all the evidence presented to the jury, no.
You talked about the DA's office and the climate when you were there and then afterwards and things like that. You are aware that the district attorney's office actually is not the one who tried this case?
I am aware of that, yes.
Okay. What kind of message do you think it sends to the public and other lawyers to allow a lawyer to keep their law license when they've been convicted of 9 felonies involving moral turpitude?
You're asking me a general question, so I'll give you a general answer. I think when you pose it that way, the way you've posed it makes it seem inconsequential. But I think, once again, we have to look at the actual facts to determine what the punishment is. And it shouldn't be, I don't think that the end result should be what the public thinks. I think the end result should be based on what is right. I mean, let me answer this. When I defend somebody, there's a great deal of the public that thinks when I have somebody found not guilty, that I somehow gamed the system or I somehow, you know, got them off. When, you know, in fact, those that looked at the evidence, you know, had a different perspective on it. But that's the point. I mean, it's our job to follow the facts, not to determine what the public's going to think.
There are 2 follow-up questions. You're aware that in the compulsory discipline process, which is where we are, the convictions are conclusive evidence of guilt.
Understood.
Okay. And you're aware that the disciplinary process or system is in place to protect the public and protect the integrity of our profession. Are you aware of that?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Thank you.
No,
Pass the witness.
Mr. Gonzalez, you've been assistant district attorney for a number of years, correct?
Yes, sir.
In Collin County?
Yes, sir.
There's been some discussion around the proposition that if you get an indictment, that's almost strictly leads to a conviction. Would you agree with that?
I would agree, depending on what kind of indictment it is. Absolutely. At least, well, let me rephrase my answer. What time period are we talking about?
Say 4 years ago.
I would say at that point in time, yes, that it was treated, because I had some clients that were indicted by these exact same prosecutors, and let me tell you, it pretty much destroyed their careers. So I've seen that.
Let me ask you this. if you are almost guaranteed a conviction, why would you ever offer a favorable plea?
Let me answer the question as, here's the question I want to answer.
Those seem inconsistent to me.
I understand. I can tell you what I did see in there. The reason you would offer some people plea bargains because you want to get to other people. You are willing to indict them on, I have seen this happen with my clients, high counts, numerous counts, offer to drop everything, let them plead to something small if they will testify against someone you want who's bigger. And that was a routine way of doing things, especially with that section.
Even when you're guaranteed the conviction?
Well, no conviction's guaranteed. I mean, that's, you know, you do have to go through a jury, but, you know, I observed Mr. Milner do this on several occasions, and like I said, I had that same thing proposed to at least 2 of my clients.
Is that who prosecuted this case?
He was the one who initially brought the prosecution. He did not actually prosecute this. I believe it was someone from the AG's office that took it over.
Any other questions for the witness? Gary, why don't we start with you?
What is somewhat sociopathic?
When you enjoy the pain it causes people, knowing that, well, let me relay a conversation that was said to one of my clients. You know,
I just want to know what the definition of somewhat sociopathic.
Someone who enjoys hurting other people.
But isn't enjoyment the opposite of sociopathic?
Well, no, that's this. I don't believe so.
Okay, whatever he is, he gets a kick out of it, huh?
Yes.
Okay. Isn't the public perception and the effect on public perception sometimes an element of what's the right thing to do?
If you're talking about this proceeding,
No, I'm just asking you a question.
Sometimes yes, but if you're talking about a legal issue, in my opinion, the standard I used is, are the facts there to support that somebody broke the law, not what opinion people hold of that person or whether or not they're a good or bad person. I mean, that's the standard I follow.
But from the standpoint of conducting the system of justice, you don't think perception has any part in it?
I think perception is, there's the public's perception is always going to be there, and there's always going to be some pressure on it, or pressure on those of us who are involved in the system. Yes, I believe it's there. But when you are handling criminal offenses and you are trying to determine whether or not there's probable cause to prosecute somebody, I don't think how much they are liked or disliked by the public should come into play. I mean, it should be based strictly on the facts and what you can or cannot prove.
That's not the only place in the system that public perception comes into play, whether or not you should indict. That's not the only place.
I'll tell you this, I don't, in 11 years as a prosecutor, I never really had any member of the public call me when I was chief of white collar or when I was in grand jury or even when I was a chief felony prosecutor. I never felt like the public was forcing me to do something or not do something. I mean, I was, you know, I mean, that was strictly up to me and my ethics and, you know.
Maybe my question is somewhat obtuse.
Mr. Kidner, did you have a question?
Yes. Were you still with the district attorney's office when Ms. Wooten was tried?
No, I was not.
And do I understand that you did attend the trial?
I didn't attend all of the trial. I attended, it was over several days. I sat in when I would say I probably was there 4 or 5 days. I did sit in on all the closing argument.
Did you do that as a matter of interest or just because you happened to be in the courthouse or for some other reason?
Watching the first part of the trial, I did it really because I was available and I was there. I had other matters pending. The closing arguments, I watched because I wanted to see how the state was going to tie all this together.
Did you observe the jury?
Yeah, I observed them while they were sitting in the box.
And did you know anything about the jury, whether they were less conservative than the juries you'd seen 10 years earlier? Could you tell from just looking at them?
No, there's no way to tell that.
And what about how cerebral they were? Could you tell if they were more cerebral than the juries you'd seen 10 years earlier?
Could not without having taken part in the actual selection. No, I couldn't.
Did it look like an educated jury?
I've learned not to judge a book by its cover. I can't say that. I do believe they were paying attention to the lawyers.
As you sit before us, do you believe that Ms. Wooten is in fact guilty of the crimes for which she was convicted?
Personally, my personal belief is no.
And does that play a part in your testimony to this board asking that she be suspended rather than disbarred?
No, I don't have an agenda. I mean, if that's what you're asking me,
Well, what I'm really asking is if in fact you believe that she was guilty, would you still be making the same plea?
If I believe she actually did it, I might still be making the same plea, but I don't think that I would be as certain of my position.
And thank you. And finally, you indicated that somebody asked you a question about sending a message and what the perception would be, and you wanted us to, or you said something about looking into the facts. Do you recall something to that effect?
Yes.
What facts do you want us to look into that we don't have before us that, let's set aside the conviction and all of that, and let's assume, because we're, I think, bound to under the law, that she is in fact guilty as convicted. What other facts are there that you think we should look into?
Well, I think what I was referring to, and I don't want to misled anybody, I wasn't referring to digging back into the facts of the actual case. What I was referencing was looking at that person's, history of performance and the kind of person they are known to be by their peers and people who work with them. Determining whether or not this is symptomatic of a larger problem for that person, or whether or not this is aberrant behavior. I mean, that's what I was referring to, and I think that's the information, or the facts, so to speak, that need to be looked into.
Thank you very much.
Further? Mr. Jones?
Do you happen to know whether Ms. Wooten testified at the underlying trial?
I did not see her testify.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Yes?
Have you had discussions with her post-trial about this situation?
No.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Counsel?
I have no further questions.
May this witness be excused.
You
No
object?
objections from us.
Witness is excused.
We rest.
I'd request that we have 5 or 10 minutes before rebuttal, if that's okay with the board.
10 minutes sufficient?
That's fine.
Okay. Take a 10-minute recess.